now available in paperback and ebook. The Man Who Rules the World. John Hayes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere. I've been listening to all the rhetoric regarding this push to stop mass shootings in America, and it's all hot air. And the reason why it's all hot air is because most Americans refuse to confront the real issues that are leading to many of these mass shooters going out here and participating in these horrific acts of violence. Now, many of these people are getting ready to go and have their marches on the Capitol in Florida and eventually another march in Washington, and they're protesting President Donald Trump, saying he needs to do something, when in actuality, there is nothing the president can do, there is nothing the Congress can do, and there is nothing a state legislator can do regarding these mass shooters. These mass shooters are a byproduct of a feminist movement that came about 50 years ago in the 1960s and the 1970s. And the seeds for those mass shooters started back then. And the reason why the seeds for those mass shooters started back then is because many of these feminists, in promoting their rhetoric, made many misandristic statements saying that they did not need a man, they were strong and independent, and the worst one of all, they could raise a boy to be a man on their own. And that piece of rhetoric right there is one of the core reasons why we have all these mass shooters today, because they said they could raise a boy to be a man on their own, and they sat there and said that the single mother household was just as functional as a two-parent household. And where do most of these mass shooters come from? 80% of them come from single mother households. And that's why we have all these mass shooters today. But most Americans refuse to acknowledge this problem because they do not want to confront the females in America regarding the way we raise boys in this society. And in this gynocentric society, we raise boys in the most dysfunctional fashion. We raise them in a culture that teaches them that males have no value, males have no worth, and males are presented in the most negative light. When we have adult males, they're presented as bumbling, stumbling idiots, or they're presented in a hyper-masculine way, and there's no balance to the image of masculinity. And in fact, things have gotten worse to the point where we have females now talking about masculinity is toxic, and every effort is made to try to destroy any sort of semblance of masculinity in society. And this is why we have what I call the third generation of beta males. Now, the first generation of beta males was created back in the 1960s during the feminist movement. And this was a push by feminists to create a kinder, gentler male. And she decided she's going to raise this boy on his own to be a man. And this kinder, gentler male was, yes, he was more sensitive and caring. Unfortunately, this soft male was filled with a lot of anger and a lot of rage. And he simmered and boiled, and eventually he began participating in acts of violence. The first generation of these beta males participated in domestic violence, and the second generation of beta males, which came up in the 1990s, that's the one most people don't want to really talk about, because that's where we started to see this escalation of violence. And these guys went from participating in domestic violence and in the black community, participating in gangs and in drug dealing and crime, to participating in these mass shootings, because this beta male has no understanding of how to be a man. He has no understanding of masculinity, and he sees the world from a female perspective, and he emotes like a female. And these mass shootings are his way of expressing his rage. And we saw an uptick in these mass shootings back in the 1990s when we had the assault weapons ban going on, and assault weapons were banned everywhere. However, we saw all these mass shootings, like these postal workers shooting up their postal warehouses or their postal facilities. We saw people like Tim McVeigh planning the Oklahoma City bombing. We saw the guy shoot up the Luby's restaurant. But most Americans don't remember this. All they remember is Columbine. But there were mass shootings throughout the 1990s, and this was due to, again, these beta males literally ticking time bombs exploding. And the thing is that we're seeing now in the mid 2000s, the 2010s, an escalation of this violence, and most people are sitting there saying we need to stop this violence, but we cannot stop this violence because back in the 1960s we created the seeds for this violence by having all of these beta males being born, and these beta males are ticking time bombs. And the reason why they are ticking time bombs is because no one knows when they will explode, how they will explode, or what type of violence they will participate in when they explode. And this is the problem with things, is that most people, again, they want to deflect and make it a gun issue, when in actuality it is an issue related to the way we have raised boys over the last 50 years, and it is an issue related to the culture around males for the last 50 years. And no one wants to confront that culture because no one wants to confront the females in America, because most American men believe that if they confront this female, they will not get access to sex from women. That's the reason why they don't want to confront this woman or hold her accountable for the dysfunctional way that these boys have been raised, this dysfunctional culture that boys have been raised in, and these dysfunctional ideologies that boys have been taught over the last 50 years. Because it's that dysfunctional culture that this mother has taught these boys that is leading to all of these mass shootings. And everyone continues to sidestep this issue because no one wants to deal with the real problems related to it. The real problems related to the whole foundation of this issue is not gun regulation, it is not mental health, because those are only symptoms of the problem. The reason why many of these boys are falling apart mentally is due to the dysfunctional culture that many boys have been raised in this misandristic and gynocentric state. That's the reason why many of these boys are having mental health problems, because they are having a mental short circuit, because many of the ways that women are teaching boys in the home and in gynocentric environments like schools is leading to them having a short circuit when they go out into the world and try to function as a man. Because we hear most of these females, they'll sit there and tell this boy to be a man. However, it's almost impossible for a boy to be a man when he's been taught manhood by a female. That is what's leading to a lot of the faulty logic in many of these boys' minds. And this whole situation is exacerbated in some cases because in these gynocentric environments, like public schools, many boys are castigated and shamed all for being boys by many teachers who just don't like them and will do things like put these boys in special ed and make efforts to give them psychotropic drugs. And this also exacerbates the situation and leads to the fuse being lit faster in some of these boys, to the point where they become not ticking time bombs, but soon to be bombs that literally explode someplace in the near future. And most people don't want to, confront this female about her behaviors, but it's her behaviors that are leading to many of these boys out here becoming mass shooters. She's the one who's programming these boys with the faulty logic, because she's the one who said she could raise a boy to be a man on her own. She was the one who said that she could raise the boy to be a better man on her own. And these boys are going out here with this faulty logic, believing that they can be a man based on solely what a woman teaches him. He then goes out into the world. He continues to short circuit because the concepts and premises that women use to navigate the world are completely different than those that men use, because the concepts and principles that men use are about his own survival, whereas females get their survival and needs met by men. So when this guy goes out here and he's looking to have relationships with women and relationships on the job or trying to get jobs, he winds up short-circuiting and he winds up having all this frustration because he's trying to navigate a course in the world as a woman would, not understanding the world is requiring him to work and function from the standard as a man. And this is what really angers them, because these women are telling him he needs to be a man, and men are telling him to be a man, but he does not know how to be a man because he's been raised by a woman. And the woman's approach to the world does not work for a man. So that's what's leading to a lot of these guys simmering and boiling in anger, and that's what's leading to them having these issues where they're having these short circuits. And this is what's making for the mental health issue, because you have this boy trying to function as a man, but he's learned all of his social behaviors from women. This is the big problem with the beta male. And this is something most people don't want to confront again, because that means confronting this woman about the way we raise boys. And the way we raise boys is something we're not talking about. Everybody's talking about marching on Washington. Everybody's talking about marching to the Capitol. Everybody's talking about gun control. When the big problem, again, is the way we raise boys. Because the way we are raising boys is messing them up. Because we would not have all these beta males if we raised boys in healthy, functional, two-parent households, and we had a culture which promoted the value of manhood, the value of masculinity, and supported male authority. This is the big problem with American society right now. No one wants to talk about these issues because everybody wants to appease the large group of females out here who make up a majority of the population. And because we have a large female population, no one really wants to confront the issue. They want to go out here and put on a show for everyone, where we have all these people out here talking about they're getting on buses and they're going to protest. And that's all a smokescreen, and it's all a chess game. Because I look at the way these politicians looked at those kids who went out to march in Florida, and it was complete indifference. And the reason why they had complete indifference regarding these kids is because they understood that changing the gun laws is not going to change the situation. And President Trump sidestepped the issue talking about bump stocks. But again, this is not a gun issue. And really, in some ways, it's not even a mental health issue, because the mental health part of it comes from the way we are raising boys with this faulty logic. But no one in the room wants to confront the real issues, which is the gynocentric way we have raised boys over the last 50 years, the social engineering of this soft male, and how this soft male's dysfunction is leading to this escalation of violence. Because as the beta male population continues to grow and come of age, this is why we are starting to see more and more of these mass shootings. Because as more and more of these beta males get older, they go out into the world, or they go out into social situations or social places like high school, they start having these short circuits, and they go out and participate in these acts of violence because they do not know how to navigate a course in the world for themselves as men. This is why we are seeing this escalation of violence in the country, because this has been going on since the mid 1980s in the black community, as it relates to all these gangs and all these drugs and this high crime. And all that violence is now spreading to the white community, and it's been spreading to the white community since the 1990s, and that was even with this assault weapons ban, and that was even with the strictest gun laws in places like the place where Adam Lanza came from. So that's showing me that gun laws aren't going to do anything, and mental health isn't really going to do much, because if we have females raising boys in a dysfunctional fashion, then it's going to lead to more and more boys short-circuiting, more and more boys malfunctioning, and these malfunctioning males going out and to participate in these horrific acts of violence. This whole situation with mass shooters cannot be quick fixed. It cannot be band-aided. It is a problem that is going to take a comprehensive, complete reform of the family, and it's going to take a complete examination of our culture. And this is something most Americans don't want to do, because when it comes down to most Americans are lazy, and most females are refusing to take responsibility. When it comes down to this problem, most Americans don't want to deal with it because they don't want to confront the woman about the way she's raising the boys, and then two, they don't want they don't want to hold her responsible, because holding her responsible means there may be a possibility they may be denied sex from that woman. And when it comes down to this female, she does not want to admit she is wrong in the way that she raised these boys. She doesn't want to admit she has followed a set of screwed up protocols, a set of screwed up programming, and a set of screwed up ideas and values that were promoted in American culture, and that these ideas and values and culture are what's leading to this whole dysfunctional male being raised. Because this attempt to create this soft male has created a Frankenstein monster that is literally destroying America overall. And the big problem with it is most people don't know when this ticking time bomb will eventually explode, or how it will explode, because when it comes down to these beta males, they don't just participate in mass shootings. That's just the extreme of the spectrum, because these guys, they want to get attention, and some of these guys, they'll participate in the mass shootings on the extreme to get attention. However, these guys will also participate in other acts of violence to get out their rage and get attention for themselves. Now, these guys will participate in violence like hitting a supervisor or slapping a woman who says no to them, or they'll go out here and get into a fist fight, or they'll go out here and just shoot an ordinary person with a murder. But the mass shootings are what everybody focuses on. But there's a spectrum of violence to these guys, and most people, again, they all are side skirting the issue because they don't want to be held accountable. And this female does not want to admit that she's wrong, and the way she has raised this boy is wrong, and our culture is wrong, because our culture has promoted gynocentrism and it has promoted misandry for over 50 years. And that's why we have all of these boys simmering and boiling in rage, and eventually becoming this whole 2 to 3 generations of ticking time bombs that would have the entire country walking on eggshells if they acknowledged it. Because that's what's really scary to most of these Americans, is that they don't want to acknowledge that if this is the case with these beta males, we do have over 50 to 60 million ticking time bombs out here. And again, there's no telling when they'll go off, how they will go off, or what type of violence they will participate in. And to acknowledge it means that in white America's culture of white feminism completely screwed up all of these white males out here and have lowered the quality of life for everyone. And the whole concept of white supremacy is now in jeopardy because of these feminists and their ideology. And because of these feminist ideology, the white race is in serious trouble. That's another thing that most Americans don't want to deal with on the white supremacist side, because when it comes down to this feminist, she has failed in her job, and she has failed to produce a superior boy in the soft male, and all she's done is produce a dysfunctional male. And that's another thing they don't want to acknowledge regarding these beta males. They don't want to acknowledge that this boy is a complete genetic mess, and he's a complete social mess overall. And that's something that many don't want to talk about regarding this whole situation. But when it comes down to these mass shooters, America is in a serious state of denial. And until they really go out of their way to acknowledge the real problems related to the dysfunction of this beta male and what's leading to him to cause mass shootings, we are going to see more violence, and we're going to see more horrific acts of violence, because as these guys have looked at Stephen Paddock's number of 52 kills, they're seeing a goal they want to achieve in breaking that record. And the reason why they want to break that record is because these guys want to have the most attention, and they want to be seen in infamy, because they know how to be famous by doing hard work for themselves. So most Americans, again, they think that they can march and protest this problem away, but there is no way you can march and protest away this problem. The only way you're going to fix this problem is not with this generation, but with the next generation of kids by raising them in a healthy and functional environment. And the only way we're going to get to that point is when Americans finally get the backbone and the stones to confront females about the way we are raising boys and confront American culture about the way we have presented men in American society. And until we do that, we are going to see more and more mass shootings and more violence because if we keep producing beta males, all we're going to do is see that more of them eventually explode in these rages. And the only way, and the only reason why they're continuing to have this rage is because the culture they're taught by these dysfunctional set of single mothers, feminists, and others who support this completely dysfunctional gynocentric state. If you'd like to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon by clicking the link in the description box. And if you want to try some of my SJS Direct Men's Issues books, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.